I guess you all know me by now. I'm Jeannie Lewis. This is welcome to the fifth of a series of workshops on mindful resilience. I'm glad you could be here today. I just wanted to mention Creative Life Mapping is a company that I started with the purpose of really inspiring, I guess, not only career development, personal development, kind of life planning for pretty much for people of all ages, maybe a particular focus on youth that are going through important transitions in their lives. And so this was a series on resilience, which kind of incorporates a lot of ideas of how to, basically support people during these challenging times. And so I just want to acknowledge, all the things that are going on in the world, the global pandemic, various, the human rights issues, economic challenges, also the recent death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which has shaken up a lot of people. And so I'm going to personally say that a lot of these factors are, hard for me, like they are hard for all of us. And I guess that's one theme in this workshop. We kind of talk about our shared humanity and all the things that we're going through. So I'd like to introduce Gabby, who is staffing this workshop today, and also acknowledge my wonderful Creative Life Mapping team. And okay, I guess we'll go ahead and move forward here. I'm trying to learn how to navigate. Okay. So this is the framework. You've all probably seen this before. It's based on the qualities of resilience. We've been talking about how we can practice mindfulness, live with purpose, and identify our values. Last time we talked about thinking flexibly, how we can identify our thoughts and our feelings and how we can flex with them, how we can actually adapt and be flexible in our lives, including the way we think, and how we can maybe challenge things that are unhelpful for us, and also even diffuse things or let them go. We also talked about neuroscience much earlier. I guess we've been kind of blending that in somewhat along the way. So just if you want to just put in the chat box your name and location. And I have a question, which is, what does self-care mean to you? This is the topic for our day, self-care. And so I just wanted to ask you, what does it mean in your life? Maybe just take a moment to respond to that question. And if you want, you can unmute yourself if you'd like. Maybe I'll just start while you're kind of thinking about that and say that for me, self-care is getting up in the morning and putting on a mindful meditation for about 10 minutes. I like to do that, and then I go have breakfast. I like to actually go for walks multiple times during the day, the morning, the lunchtime, and sometimes in the evening. And to me, that kind of regulates my day. It kind of gets me rolling and keeps me, even when I'm feeling a little bit low on energy, just getting out for a little walk around the neighborhood is a form of self-care. Anyone else want to comment on what self-care means in your life? Okay. Does anybody have time for self-care? Okay, John, thank you. Self-care is important. One piece of a bigger picture, meaning-making moments fill my pool of resilience. Wow. Meaning-making moments. Thank you. That sounds nice. I'd like to hear about what you get meaning from. Bella says, self-care is paying attention to my body, recognizing the different sensations and thought patterns that arise. If negative thoughts occur, I try to deal with them compassionately. And Kimberly from Torrance, I think self-care means putting time aside from daily tasks and focusing on your inner self. Great, yes. Yeah, that was Gail. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing. Gail, no, that was Kimberly. Okay, I'm sorry. Self-care means putting aside time and from your daily task and focusing on your inner self. And then Gail, it's essential to everyone learning to fill my cup up first and let it overflow and then help someone else. Thank you. Okay, great. Sarah, elementary school counselor from Antelope Valley, self-care for me, self-care means getting enough sleep and removing the negative from my life, including people. Good point. We want to hang around positive people. Thank you for sharing. So this is a presentation on self-care of mind and body. And I guess I've really been thinking a lot about this because we tend to kind of push ourselves so much to kind of do, and sometimes we kind of treat our bodies like machines. And so I think what I'm advocating here for is that we step back and take care of ourselves. And many of you are helping others, and so it's particularly important to take care of yourself. So this is a framework that I've developed called Self-Care in Mind and Body, and includes these 6 components we'll talk about today: self-compassion, sleep, physical activity, nutrition, play, and relaxation. And I kind of borrowed this concept from Dan Siegel, who's one of my favorite gurus, I guess you could say. And he created this concept called the healthy mind platter. And it has multiple dimensions that you kind of need in your life to have a balanced life. And so that's a lot of what this presentation is about: creating balance between all these different things. And some of the things are not included here because they're included in another workshop, which is, I guess particularly on our next workshop on social and family bonds. But another important area is connecting with others and having focus time on your activities that are important to you, and just spending time in, which would be mindfulness, which is what we covered in our earlier workshops. So kind of to make a full plate and have it be a balanced plate of self-care of mind and body. So the first concept I'd like to present is something called self-compassion. And I have to admit that even though I'm in this field of mental health, self-compassion was something that I was kind of learning, I don't say somewhat new. I kind of, picked up several books on this subject and watched some videos. And I think it's particularly important in this time because we're going through so many different difficult situations to be caring for ourselves. And so just to kind of introduce this idea, everybody hurts sometimes, and life dishes up pain for all of us. And we get to repeatedly experience disappointment, frustration, failure, rejection, illness, injury, conflict, hostility, grief, fear, anxiety, sadness, guilt, loss, loneliness, health issues, financial issues, relationship issues, and work issues, and so on. And so, unfortunately, when we experience great pain, we often don't treat ourselves very well. And I am inspired to talk about this since I do notice that a lot of times in working with and talking with people, I often find that they're very hard on themselves. And maybe we have somewhat of a perfectionistic culture, especially for maybe young people. I don't know, it's true, maybe it's true for all of us, but where we think we need to be perfect. And therefore, when we're not, we're very hard on ourselves. So self-compassion, acknowledges that we suffer and that we want to be kind in that suffering. And so we want to treat ourselves with the same warmth, caring, and kindness that you'd extend to someone that you love and who are in a similar type of pain. And this is, self-compassion has been around for years, and it's played a role in many of the many religious and spiritual practice. And now it's increasingly being incorporated into modern life. And therapy and treating different clinical issues like pain or grief or loss, or just, helping us to kind of understand how we can support ourselves. And there is a wealth of research on the benefits of self-compassion. So if you're wondering, like, do I deserve to have self-compassion? Well, there's research that shows that it really does help you. It can help with depression. It can help with anxiety. It can help with addictions. So this is a good thing to learn about if you haven't already learned about it. So I wanted to introduce someone by the name of Kristen Neff, who is an associate professor in human development at the University of Texas in Austin. And she is a research scientist on self-compassion. And she's written several books on this subject, which I'll have on your resource list. She has identified three major components of self-compassion, and they include self-kindness, being loving towards ourselves instead of being self-critical, and common humanity, and noting that everyone suffers. You're not, no one is perfect. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect, and you're not alone. And so that's kind of this concept of common humanity, is that sometimes when we're suffering, we think we're all by ourselves, we're lonely, or we think we're the only one that is suffering. And that makes us even feel worse, that loneliness, that we're alone with these difficult feelings. But if we recognize that I'm not the only one who makes mistakes. All people, all humans suffer. And the very definition of human means that we're, vulnerable and we're imperfect. And therefore, we recognize that suffering and personal inadequacy is part of our shared human experience. Just like when we lose someone, we realize like our life doesn't last forever, and the loved ones around us don't last forever. So realizing that that's a common and a kind of the aspect of being human. And then with mindfulness is the third element of, or component of self-compassion. We notice our struggle, and this kind of relates back to thinking flexibly, but we notice how we feel and think. We want to notice how we're feeling, and we feel it instead of just being reactive. We try not to avoid these feelings, and we just kind of are with it, kind of in a mindful way, so we don't over-identify with the suffering. So there's a couple of strategies. I kind of keep, I guess my yellow slides are strategies, but a couple of them are loving kindness meditation. We had that earlier, I think in the first session. And then self-compassion meditations, which there are quite a number of them. And so what I would like to do now is just take a self-compassion break and share with you something. This is actually comes from the Greater Good Science Center, which is UC Berkeley. And just to kind of introduce this, just the idea of why you should take a self-compassion break is because difficult situations can become even harder when we beat ourselves up over them and interpret them as a sign that we're less capable or worthy than other people. In fact, we often judge ourselves more harshly than we judge others. And when we make a mistake, we feel stressed out, and that makes us feel isolated, unhappy, and even more stressed. So it may even make us try to feel better about ourselves. Sometimes people even denigrate other people because of this. So rather than have this harsh self-criticism, a healthier response is to treat yourself with compassion and understanding. And so, and according to the psychologist Kristen Neff, this self-compassion has multiple components, which I just actually talked about. So what I'd like you to do is, in terms of a practice, our first practice today, is I would like to for you to think of a situation in your life that is difficult or is causing you stress. So just take a moment to think about this. Maybe take a few deep breaths and just kind of think of something that's causing you stress. And call this situation to mind and see if you can actually feel the stress and emotion in that discomfort in your body. Now say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. This acknowledgement is a form of mindfulness, of simply noticing what's going on with you emotionally in the present moment without judging that experience as good or bad. You can also say to yourself, this hurts, and this is stress. Use whatever statement feels most natural to you. And next say to yourself, suffering is part of life. This is a recognition that our common humanity with others, that all people have trying experiences, and these experiences give you something in common with the rest of humanity rather than the mark against you as being abnormal or deficient. Other options for this statement might be, other people feel this way, or I'm not alone, or we all struggle in our lives. Now put your hands over your heart and feel the warmth of your hands and the gentle touch on your chest and say, may I be kind to myself. This is a way to express self-kindness. You can also consider whether there's some other specific phrase that would speak to you in this particular situation. And here's some examples. May I give myself the compassion that I need. May I accept myself as I am. May I learn to accept myself as I am. May I forgive myself. May I be strong. May I be patient. I particularly like the one, may I accept myself as I am. I'd like more people to say that. This practice can be used any time of the day or night. If you practice it in moments of relative self-calm, it might become easier for you to experience the parts of self-compassion, mindfulness, common humanity, and self-kindness when you need them the most. If you would like, I think there is an audio recording of this on the Self-Compassion website by Christine Neff, which, by the way, you'll have her website on my resource list that I'll be giving you. So any reactions to that? Any comments of how this self-compassion break could be used in your life? Anybody think of when they would like to employ this? If not, I guess we'll move on. Someone's waiting. There we go. Okay, so we'll move forward. So Okay, so again, going on with this idea of having a balanced life, one important part of having a balanced life is having plenty of time to sleep, enough time to sleep. And so when you give your brain the rest it needs, it consolidates what we've learned and it helps recover from the experience of the day. And so I'm going to talk to you about a couple of concepts about sleep time. By the way, there's different sleep recommendations for different age groups. And I was noticing from the National Sleep Foundation, which I probably should have put on my resource list, that there's guidelines for different age groups. But just to give a couple of examples, at least for young people, or well, actually, okay, let me just start with teens need about 8 to 10 hours of sleep, young adults 7 to 9 hours, and adults between the ages of 26 and 64 need 7 to 9 hours, and then older adults need 7 to 8 hours. So those are just a couple of examples, but if you want to get into more detail, you could take a look at the National Sleep Foundation website if you want to get more information. A lot of it, though, from what I'm studying, and I took a course on sleep called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Insomnia, and it really does in part depend on your own individual needs as well. So I've noticed that some people need more sleep than others. Like, for example, my husband doesn't sleep as long as I do, and we always banter back and forth about this because he can get by with like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, which to me doesn't seem like enough. I need a minimum of 6 hours. That's my bare minimum. I do much better if I have 7 hours, maybe 8 hours. But yes, I've always learned about myself that I absolutely need 6 hours. If I get less than that, I don't feel quite right. But anyway, so you can check out your own sleep needs, and there's ways to do that actually if you want to keep a sleep diary and note, how long you tend to sleep each night. That does kind of help figure out your own need for sleep. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about some sleep problems. I mean, we always say, well, get enough sleep, but then what if you have a problem falling asleep? So I'm going to talk a little bit about sleep and sleep problems and insomnia. So there is, first of all, this concept of a sleep-wake cycle, and there are two different kind of drives that go on that relate to our circadian rhythms. And maybe we forget sometimes about our circadian rhythms, but they're quite important in terms of the cycle of our body throughout the day and night. So there's two, if you see this chart here on the bottom, there's something called the circadian alerting signal, and that kind of, when you wake up in the morning, it kind of increases your sense of alertness. And then over the course of the day, it keeps going up, and then it starts decreasing your alert signal at about 9 p.m. And then it kind of gradually goes down until you fall asleep. At the same time, there's a drive for sleep, which is where you see those arrows on the top, if everybody can see that okay. And that's where we have a sleep drive. And that's kind of a counterbalancing force to our alerting system. And so we want those two to kind of be somewhat in sync with each other. So this is called the circadian and homeostatic regulation of sleep. And it basically is that there's a drive to sleep that is really developed by how the duration of our being awake. So the circadian process transmits the kind of signals that arouse our networks, promote wakefulness in opposition to this drive for sleep, and those two are balanced with each other. Actually, this is sort of a funny note. When I was growing up, I grew up in Minnesota. My neighbor, her father was an expert. He was a research scientist on circadian rhythms, and my friend who was my age, used to take her temperature and her, at different times of the day, she would take her pulse and her temperature. And I guess she was helping him with studying, different things over the course of the day. So sometimes we ignore this, but it's good to learn about circadian rhythms. So there are some strategies for sleep. Some of them are kind of the general strategy, which you may have heard about, is called sleep hygiene. And that's these are just kind of general guidelines for anyone to make, to help with your sleep and to create a nice environment for your sleep. And some of the components are that is that you create your bedroom environment is comfortable, it's quiet, dark. You want it to be cool, not too hot. I think it's hard to sleep when it's hot. You don't want to eat more than a light snack before bedtime. You don't want to eat too close to bedtime. Avoid naps that are 15 minutes, longer than 15 minutes, because that actually would decrease that drive for sleep that we talked about earlier. And you want to allow yourself at least an hour before bedtime to unwind. And there's some wind down activities that you can access. It's good to have a regular sleep schedule, and that's usually most regulated by the time you wake up. So if you can kind of drive your sleep cycle based on a wake up time that you normally might need for work and keep that regulated, it helps kind of regulate your body and your circadian rhythms. It's recommended in terms of hygiene, sleep hygiene, not to exercise too close to bedtime, so beyond 2 hours, might make it harder. It could be a stimulant. Nicotine is a stimulant. It can keep you awake. And alcohol, you may fall asleep with alcohol, but it also interrupts the sleep pattern. So it can wake you up. Not to encourage anyone to drink, by the way, but anyway. And sleeping pills, they can help temporarily, but they may create the problem. They make problems worse later. And actually, this type of sleep therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy for sleep, or CBTI it's called, is actually considered the gold standard for sleep if people have insomnia. So maybe recommended is just even better than medication, which is maybe hard to convince people because a lot of times people do like to take sleep medications. Anyway, there's another concept which is called stimulus control, and this kind of comes out of behavioral kind of concepts. And this is kind of like you want to strengthen your bed and bedroom as cues for sleep. And so you want to keep, I guess you maybe create a low stimulus environment in your bedroom. So one thing is to have a consistent sleep-wake schedule. Only go to bed when you're sleepy. The longer you're awake in bed, the more the bed is associated with a place to stay awake instead of asleep. And so you want to delay your bedtime. You want to create that sleep drive and go to bed when you're really ready to go to sleep. And get out of bed when you can't fall asleep or go back to sleep in about 15 minutes. This is if you're having trouble with insomnia. So you might, if you're really having trouble with this, you might get up and do some kind of relaxing activity and just use your bed for sleep only, not do your homework in bed, maybe other computers or mobile devices. Just relaxing activities would be good. I guess one thing I would say is that, lost my train of thought here. So stimulus control, like I said before, is something that you do, particularly if you are having trouble sleeping. Sleep hygiene is sort of regular guidelines, but one thing I think a principle to try to stick to is your wake up time. I think that's an important concept. And so you want to plan that around, like, I have to get up at 6. So if I need 8 hours of sleep, I need to go to bed at 10 o'clock. No, yeah, 8 hours of sleep, that's right. So this is something called a strategy called the winding down routine. And there are some apps that you can use for this, including Headspace, which is free, by the way, in LA County. they have a lot of these mindfulness applications have meditations that you can listen to at night. But anyway, some of the winding down routine includes dimming your lights before bedtime. You start winding down your brain and your body, doing some relaxing activities outside the bedroom just to pass the time quietly. Avoid looking at anything with a screen because that can stimulate your awakeness, or that part of the cycle of like thinking, oh, it's time to get up. Stow away your tablet, your phone, your computer. I think one of the recommendations, if people get distracted by their phone at night, is to use an alarm clock. Maybe take the phone out of your bedroom and actually use an alarm clock instead. And you could, about 10 minutes before bedtime, you could use a focused mindfulness activity. Like I mentioned, there are quite a few of those available. And actually, this is something I also have thought about recently. Is a lot of times people worry at night. And so if you have a tendency to worry, I call it worrying early. Maybe set up a time early in the day when you're worrying, and maybe just like have a worry time. But try to actually just focus on getting into your body at night. And so when you're trying to wind down, just try to focus on the sensations of your body as opposed to what mental activity is going on in your head. There is I found this quite interesting. I just discovered this recently, that there's actually a nightmare protocol. So people have nightmares. There's a step-by-step approach where you can actually affect your nightmares. And it's basically, what you do is you practice relaxation, as we were talking about before, and you choose a recurring nightmare that you'd like to work on. And you can write that up, or describe that. And you write that down, you kind of describe it in detail, like the sights, smells, sounds, any description that you can, and any thoughts or feelings that you make about yourself during the dream. And then, so you first write what the target nightmare is, and then you choose the changed outcome you would like for the nightmare. And so that could be, you kind of create a new story. I kind of call this kind of like a narrative approach. And so you change the outcome of the nightmare that how you want it to end. And writing this down will give you a sense of peace I guess basically you practice this, or change story before bedtime. And it could include changed thoughts, feelings, and assumptions about yourself. So actually, I had a client, hadn't read this before this, but I did have a client who had a nightmare about someone chasing him, and I thought of that idea, like, could you just change the story, And so he thought of this idea of actually confronting the person that was chasing him. And also, I think also included a wind down routine at night with that. And he did say it helped, actually. So the next area I want to talk about is physical time. And this has to do with physical activity, our body, taking care of our body, and just kind of talk a little bit about some of the benefits of exercise. And there are quite a few, and you always seem to read more, like I read in the paper, oh, it helps with this, exercise helps with this, and it helps with that. But it, as we all know, it kind of helps with weight control. It prevents health problems, like regular exercise can help manage problems like stroke or metabolic syndrome or high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, depression, anxiety, arthritis. It can improve cognitive function, which helps lower our risk of death from all causes. It also helps with lowering our blood lipoproteins and decreases unhealthy triglycerides. So, so it has a lot of benefits. It helps with health problems. It improves our mood. It's recommended actually when people feel depressed. We always recommend get active, go out and get some exercise. It boosts our energy and promotes sleep, and it's a fun and social activity. You can do it with other people. So I guess maybe most people wouldn't argue with it, that is a good thing. And then there are some extra benefits for youth of helping them with concentration in school, academic performance, healthy bones and muscle growth, healthy growth and development, and self-esteem. There are different types of exercise: aerobic and muscle strengthening, flexibility and balance. And the guidelines for exercise recommend about 30 minutes a day of moderate aerobic activity for adults, and about about an hour for young people. And you kind of blend in these different kinds of activities, where I think aerobic is something that's recommended most days, but also a couple of days of the week doing muscle strengthening, like maybe 3 days a week, and some flexibility and balance activities, maybe 3 days a week as well. So this is just, the kind of idea of energy balance, and that we want to have sort of a balanced weight. You want to have kind of the calories that we burn balanced with the calories we've eaten. And if we burn less than we've eaten, then we tend to gain weight. And the opposite is true. If we burn more than we've eaten, and we tend to lose weight. So with COVID and exercise, it's been a little bit harder because a lot of the gyms have been closed. And so, but there are a lot of exercise videos. There's a lot of different ways we can get exercise, even with COVID. And I have a couple of examples on the resource page that I'll be giving you, but some examples. There's some local places, like there's a woman named Sue Lehman in this area of the South Bay, and she has online workshops which are excellent on yoga. And there's some place called Dance One, which has dance videos. Online, you can find some free applications. Like, for example, I'm in Silver Sneakers, and they have free workshops, but there are others as well. There's something called Yoga with Heather. She has quite a few different things that are free, and there's some ones my daughter had shared with me, but on YouTube. So a lot of them are on YouTube. And there's active video games, and then of course just walking and hiking outside. These are some examples. So even short walks can be helpful. And sometimes we think, oh, if I can't do a long walk, then what's the use? But even these short, different stints of exercise can be good. And I also recommend that you make it easy for yourself, and do something that's convenient. Because if we say, oh, I can only exercise if I go to the gym, then it might not happen as much. So just as a strategy to establish an exercise routine, another part of the day, just think for yourself of what time of day, maybe you already do this, and what type of exercise is convenient for you or do you enjoy. And then just, like I said, make it easy and convenient. Like one thing I've noticed is that if, my tennis shoes are down by the door and I have everything ready, I have my mask by the door, I can easily just pop those things on and go out for a walk, quickly. And I've also found that it is nice to do it with other people if that's possible, because you kind of motivate each other. So now I would like to do another practice with you. I'm continuing with this theme of self-compassion. I'd like to share with you something called the compassionate hand. So what I'd like you to do is find a comfortable position in which you are centered and alert. In your chair, you could lean slightly forward and straighten your back, drop your shoulders, and press your feet gently onto the floor. Just take a few deep breaths. So what I'd like you to do is bring an emotion to your mind or something that you're struggling with. Just take a moment to reflect on that, something you're struggling with right now. And just notice the nature of this feeling that you have. Remember what has happened, consider how it's affecting you, and think about how it might affect your future. And notice what difficult thoughts and feelings arise. So just take a moment to bring this to mind. Just consider how it's affecting you, some situation or feeling. And now I'd like you to pick one of your hands and imagine it's the hand of someone very kind and caring. And place this hand slowly and gently on whatever part of your body hurts the most. It could be an emotion, or it could actually be a physical pain or tension. Perhaps you can feel the pain the most in your chest, your head, your neck, or your stomach. Wherever it is most intense, lay your hand there. If you're numb, lay your hand on the part that feels the numbest. If you're feeling neither pain nor numbness, then simply rest your hand on the center of your chest. Allow your hand to rest there, lightly and gently. Feel it against your skin or against your clothes. And feel the warmth flowing from your palm into your body. Now imagine your body softening around this pain, loosening up, softening, and making space. If you're numb, then soften and loosen around that numbness. And if you're neither hurting nor numb, then imagine it any way you like. You can imagine that it's some magical sense. Your heart is opening, for example. Hold your pain or numbness very gently. Hold it as if it's a crying baby or a whimpering puppy or a priceless work of art. Infuse this gentle action with caring and warmth as if you're reaching out to someone you care about. Let the kindness flow from your fingers into your body. Now use both of your hands in one kind gesture. Place one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach, and let them gently rest there. And hold yourself kindly. Take as long as you wish to sit in this manner, connecting with yourself, caring for yourself, contributing comfort and support. Continue this for as little or as long as you wish. 5 seconds or 10 minutes, it doesn't matter. It's the spirit of kindness that counts when you make this gesture. Most people find this exercise to be quite soothing. It tends to center you and bring you comfort. So I encourage you to do it throughout your day. I guess we wouldn't do it in the middle of work or at the business meeting, but or in school, but you could do it on your own when you have a moment to yourself or moments to yourself. And if you have some chance and you didn't get much out of it, just keep trying, and pretty soon you might find this helpful. You could also modify this by rubbing your neck or shoulders, or massaging the temples or your eyelids, or gently stroking your forehead or your arms. This is a simple act of self-compassion that can have that you could practice, and it's kind of in a form of emotional first aid, the very first step that you can take when you're hurting. So, any feedback, any thoughts on reactions to this compassionate hand exercise, how you might find that useful, any feelings that it brought up for you? Gail shares that if she finds it very useful. Thank you, Gail. Anybody else want to share any response, any part of your body that you think you'd like to nurture? Linda shares, thank you, Linda, very soothing. It's a nice form of self-care. Kimberly shares, I really like the compassionate hand meditation. I was able to completely relax. Thank you. There's some other ways that you could do this. I was thinking you can, so we were thinking of ideas of how you can kind of comfort yourself physically. And maybe one is like with a blanket, wrapping yourself in a blanket, like, what do you call it with a baby when you swaddle a baby? Swaddling. Thank you, John. Kimberly, I have to figure out where I got this. I will look that up, actually. It's I have it here, and I took a page out of a book. I should have labeled it, but it's something called the Reality Slap, and it's page 30, so I have to look that up. But maybe we could Google compassionate hand and find that. But yeah, what else? Another thing I maybe that can be comforting is to take a shawl and wrap it around and kind of like comfort yourself that way with a shawl. That can be kind of comforting. Can anybody think of any other ideas of how you can comfort yourself compassionately? Sometimes I like to think like I'm just like a little baby in a crib. I know this sounds funny. And just like breathing, and in such a relaxed way, I kind of think of like watching a baby breathing, and when they're sleeping, and how relaxed they look. And I try to think like I'm just like a baby, just relaxing, comforting myself, kind of just softening different parts of your body. Way. Moving on to nutrition time, taking time to eat and be healthy. So when we take time to nurture our bodies in a healthy way, including planning meals, finding healthy recipes and eating mindfully, this is another way of nurturing ourselves, and eating a good diet that makes us feel good. And so I'm not going to pretend to be a nutritional expert, but I did look up healthy brain diet. And some of the elements are to load up on fruits and vegetables, to eat meat sparingly, to focus on whole foods, limit processed foods, and be flexible. So, but there is something called a brain diet, and some people recommend different kinds of things like a Mediterranean-oriented diet. It seems like it's popular, but I guess we want to keep our diet low in sugar and fat, but focusing on whole foods and having lots of fruits and vegetables, eating across the rainbow, which is also quite beautiful. So I guess I just want to also kind of highlight something. This is from my own history, I guess, of going through Earth Day when I was in high school. I may date myself here. This book came out called Diet for a Small Planet, and thinking now a lot about the Earth and climate change. I think about this book that talks called The Diet for a Small Planet. And it talks about the benefits of a plant-based diet, not only for our health, which it is, it is recommended for our health, but it also helps our planet in the sense of the way food is produced more efficiently by having more plant-based foods. In other words, when we produce meat, it takes more energy, and maybe it impacts the carbon footprint to a greater extent, because we need to produce vegetables to actually feed animals. And so that's kind of a secondary production. So we need both the land to produce food as well as feeding the animals. So it is helpful and healthy both for ourselves and our planet to eat a plant-oriented diet. If anyone needed an argument for that. And I just want to share with you this book called Food Rules, which is by Michael Pollan. He wrote Omnivore's Dilemma, and he has had quite a lot of influence on a lot of us on how food is produced in the United States, like maybe throughout the world, and also how we can eat in a healthy way. And his rules are to eat food, mostly plants, but not too much. So that's, you want to put it simply. And just to give you in this book, which is a very cute book, by the way, I don't know if I can show it to you, but I guess you can see the cover, but it has very cute pictures in the book. I don't know if you see my screen, but just like very nicely written book, but very simple. And it's just these little concepts that he calls food rules. And I mean, just to give you a couple of examples of food rules. Like he says, for example, don't eat anything your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. So a lot of the foods in the supermarket wouldn't be recognized there were inventions that wouldn't be recognized. Avoid food products containing ingredients that no ordinary human would keep in the pantry. Let's see what else. Avoid food products that contain more than 5 ingredients. And I guess that's speaking a lot to additives that are added to food, and how sometimes you see these long lists of things in the ingredients. I guess one thing is to notice what ingredients are in your food. Avoid food products that are low fat or non-fat. Eat only foods that will eventually rot. I guess that are not meant for industrial use. And I guess another thing is buy your snacks at the farmer's market, eat foods that have been cooked by humans, which is another important thing. Slow down and cook our own food. It's really mindful. So these are just some examples. I think one of his concepts is when you're shopping, shop around the edges of the supermarket as opposed to the middle, because that tends to be where the whole foods are located. So here's another strategy called mindful cooking. And by the way, there is a little overview of this in Headspace, if you want to access that. about what mindful cooking is, but I guess this whole idea is that we slow down and cook, and that instead of just rushing around, make cooking an enjoyable practice. You can, kind of planning meals for the week, or when you're actually chopping, slicing, marinating, whipping, or kneading, that can be a mindful activity. And just approach just mindful cooking the meal as a mindfulness exercise. And I'm just going to use myself as an example, that when I kind of have a ritual, and this is sort of, kind of my day, which is like when I finish work, before dinner, I'll make a salad, and I'll get out all these vegetables. Like I'll get pepper and cucumbers and lettuce, and I guess whatever I have, tomatoes. And I sometimes I'll put on music and just chop these vegetables. And it's kind of like a ritual. It kind of helps me regulate my day. And it's also very pretty. And I guess that's why I picked this picture, to show chopping vegetables, but how pretty vegetables are. And if you can just kind of appreciate how beautiful they are while you're chopping them. But that would be an example. So, and then mindful eating is kind of, we couldn't do that in this workshop, but there is some different practices for mindful eating, like mindfully eating a raisin, or, has been part of some mindfulness workshops, or mindfully eating a grape. And you very slowly eat it, and notice before you eat it, you kind of take note of all the texture, and then you put it in your mouth. You don't, chew it right away. You just roll it around on your tongue, and you let it absorb, and then you might bite into it, and you notice the taste on your tongue. So it's just really slowing this whole process down. And I guess the other aspects of mindful eating are just noticing how foods make you feel, like what foods make you feel good and what make you don't feel not good. You observe them, you savor them, and just relax while you're eating, and try not to rush through eating. Like I do note that sometimes I'll eat like this, which I call unmindful eating, where you just kind of shovel the food in your mouth, like you're having a bowl of cereal, and you just put it in your mouth, and you don't really pay any attention. It's just like you're a robot or something. So it's nice to slow down and eat mindfully. So this is a practice I want to share with you from a book called Planting Seeds, which is another very cute book with lots of cute pictures. I'm just going to show you the picture of the book, or the cover of the book. It's kind of oriented toward children, but I thought, and I hope that I don't get too emotional when I read this, because the last time I read it, I did. But anyway, so this is something called Food Contemplations, and it comes from the book Planting Seeds. From the author is Thich Nhat Hanh in the Plum Village community. Food Contemplations. This food is a gift of the whole universe, the earth, the sky, the rain, and the sun. We thank the people who have made this food, especially the farmers, the people who pick the food, the people who bring it to the market, and the cooks. We only put on our plate as much food as we can eat. We want to chew the food slowly so that we can enjoy it. We want to eat in a way that nurtures our compassion, protects other species and the environment, and reverses global warming. This food gives us energy to practice being more loving and understanding. We eat this food in order to be healthy and happy, and to love each other as a family. I was noticing that when I was reading that earlier, when we talk about people that produce the food and bring it, sometimes we don't think about that, like what how the food even gets to us. It arrives at the market, but do we think about all the people that are involved in making our food possible and so abundant? I was just so amazed when I moved to California of the abundance of food here. I mean, in terms of like the types of food and the fresh foods that you are able to get. And I've learned from my daughter, who's very much a foodie type person who loves sustainable foods, how wonderful it is to, when we can do this, go to the farmer's market and just get fresh food, the group food that's grown locally. Anybody want to share anything about food contemplations? Hopefully I spelled that correctly. So the next part of our balanced life includes playtime. And this is when we allow ourselves to be spontaneous or creative, playfully enjoying novel experiences. We help make new connections in the brain. Play is not only important for kids, but it's also important for adults and animals, by the way, as we can see. So we want to have playtime, and many of us, including myself, don't have enough of this. So I'm going to confess that is something I need to do more of. So I want to talk a little bit about, there's a book called Play by Stuart Brown, and he is the head of the National Institute on Play. And he has, actually, I was able to read his book several years ago and I guess attend a conference at UCLA that was focused on play. And a lot of it was talking about how important it is. And I think we think of it as important for kids, which I think, by the way, kids probably don't get enough time to play, and also important for adults. It's considered to be a natural part of childhood, and there's benefits for the healthy development of children. There's really no singular definition of play, but some of the concepts of play, according to Stuart Brown, are things like it's a purposeless activity. It's done for its own sake, just for fun. Something that brings you joy, something that's voluntary, something that you're attracted to, that kind of engages you, that gives you freedom from thinking about time, like you don't have to worry about time. And there's a diminished consciousness of yourself. You kind of lose yourself in it. There's a potential even for improvising or sometimes problem solving. And there's a desire to keep doing it. And Dr. Brown has found that, in brain studies that brains light up when you're doing neuro studies of brain neuroscience, that our brains light up in many ways when we play. And so there are a lot of different types of play he brings up, and he declines to say like, oh, this is exactly the definition of play, because it could be many things, and it could include actually work for some people, people that get so engaged in what they do. But there was a video that he showed in, which I was kind of looking for a video for this, but where he showed actually two animals that I think they were dogs or huskies in the Arctic, and a polar bear, and how traditionally those two could be actually seen as enemies to each other. But when they approach each other in a playful way, like bowing down, I think dogs, maybe you can see this with dogs where they kind of bow down, that's playful, like downward dog. That's kind of a playful stance for a dog, or, that there are certain gestures that are recognizable by animals as well as humans, that people are ready to engage in play. And so this is maybe it seems like a fairly basic thing, but I guess sometimes we don't think of it, especially as adults, we don't. And we don't often value it enough for kids to just have free time to do this too. And, not programming kids so much, like where they don't have time just to kind of have free time. So I guess one strategy here would be to identify your ways of playing, your ways to play. Anybody want to share what they like to do? Oh, Kimberly shared a resource called the Need to Grow documentary. I don't know if you want to share that, Kimberly. Anybody want to share what they like to do for play? I personally like, okay, so here we go. Thank you, Gail. Gail's starting a family trivia on Zoom, and they're having a blast while learning. Great. Very good COVID, COVID play. Okay, so Sarah would like to play tug of war with her puppy. They say our blood pressure goes down when we pet our animals, like our dogs. Or Kimberly, we have family game night. Oh, John, thank you. Comedy shows and playing the guitar. Yes. Comedy. Oh, how much we need that now. Actually, my daughter was encouraging me to watch, I don't know if anybody watches this show, but it's called Schitt's Creek. But anyway, my daughter's been encouraging me to watch comedy because I tend to get quite serious, and I was watching that. And then I think that sometimes when you watch comedy, you can think back on like a funny line or something, and it can kind of bring a chuckle during the day. So anyway, thank you for sharing that. So please take time to play. And this is a related concept called flow. Now, I practice pronouncing the name. Okay, I'm going to say. So this is Mahala Csikszentmihalyi. Csikszentmihalyi. And he is a psychologist in the kind of the vein of positive psychology, which created this concept called flow, a flow state. And it's kind of similar a little bit to play. But he talks about it in this book called Flow. And some of the elements are that you have a goal, and like say a tennis player wants to win a game, that could be, and you get some feedback. There's a high level of concentration to a limited field. So you kind of narrow your focus and delve into this activity. And instead of like, multitasking, you're just focused. You have intense focus on the activity. And when you engage in this activity, there's a balance between your skill and your challenge. So it's not too challenging that you can't, but it is challenging. It's not, you have some skill, and that the difficulty might provide some challenge, but it's within your ability to tackle it. So like for example, if it was too difficult, like a piece of music that, a musician was trying to play, that, you might want to have something that's sufficiently challenging, but not just terribly, terribly challenging, because it'd be frustrating and disappointing. But if you don't want it to be too unchallenging either, because that could lead to boredom. And so it's kind of in the range between too much and too little. And there's a feeling of control with flow, and that you're in control of what you're doing, and it's effortless. It kind of flows in, with some ease and harmony. And like I said, this could happen with a number of different types of activities. It could be painting, it could be doing work, it could be doing music, it could be doing art. But the activity runs smoothly, and some of the decisions just could arise spontaneously from the demands of the activity. and there's altered sense of time. So you kind of, in a very deep flow state, you kind of lose your perception of time. And you kind of, again, that kind of went back a little bit to the idea of play, where you have sort of an open period of time. But you might actually just like forget about time while you're doing it. And there's just kind of a melting together of, you know, what you're doing, and you're just completely immersed and involved in the activity. And then, so these are just some of the qualities, and I thought this was a really cool concept. And I think just maybe between these two concepts of play and flow is to allow yourself some time, even if it's just during the week, when you have some open space and you're just kind of relaxing, or you could be doing something that doesn't have a time frame associated with it, that you can kind of just immerse yourself in it. It could be art, or it could be music, it could be listening to music, or it could be, yeah. So by the way, I was noticing in researching this too, that even some companies have decided to incorporate this in their workspaces, because they realize that people need time to be creative. They need to have flexibility of scheduling. And that's why I think maybe some companies like Google is often cited as having flexible schedules, so they can have more kind of opportunities for flow, or, you know, creative time. So this is just another thing maybe to just think about, is to identify what your flow activities. Anybody want to think of anything you think might constitute flow for you? For me, actually, dancing is a flow experience for me. Although I don't dance as much as I used to. I mean, I like to go to like things where you can dance, but I don't know where you can do that. But anyway, that's a flow activity for me. Anybody think of anything else? Athletes and dancers. John shares, they describe being in that zone. I suppose sometimes people, when they run, they feel that way. So I'm going to just backtrack for a second. That Gail shared something on the topic of pain. And she notes that on Headspace, there's a meditation series on pain management. So Andy, who's the co-founder of Headspace, states, we need to embrace the pain. The more we resist feeling the pain, and the more painful it becomes. It's when we recognize and move toward the pain that it lessens. That is a very good point. And environment has a lot to do with creating flow. So I guess maybe we need to create environments that allow us to have that. Sometimes we get so programmed that we don't have time for this. Bella shares that doing anything artistic. I've been rock climbing a few times and definitely experienced this. Maybe sometimes hiking. Bike riding. Audrey shares that bike riding. So swimming, Gail. Yes, swimming. That is a good thing with flow. Listening to water flow is flow experience. Oh, yeah. I haven't gone swimming for a while. Are the pools open now? Anybody know? No? Okay. But yeah, going back to what Gail was saying, I mean, that's an important point, that we kind of need to embrace our emotions, even as difficult as they are, because when we avoid them, I think it actually leads to more distress. So Bella shares that Manhattan Beach has some open pools, but you have to reserve them ahead of time. I know that Hawthorne had an outdoor pool. I don't know if that's open. So moving on. So the last, or not, I guess this is maybe the second to the last part we're going to talk about is called relaxation time. And this is actually something we talked about at our first workshop on how to, the relaxation response. And I just want to continue to encourage you to find ways and times to relax. And I know, people just say, like, well, just relax, but that's, it's easier said than done. But just kind of just find some particular way that works for you, whether it's just lying on your back and trying to do some deep breathing, or, other activities like, taking your dog for a walk or playing with your dog. And, there are quite a few different strategies for relaxation. I had a relaxation exercise at the beginning of this series, but you can also, there's a number of different ways to do relaxation. There's something called progressive muscle relaxation. There's cued breathing, where you kind of use a cue to start relaxing, like say it's washing your hands. What else is there? There's other ways to relax, like doing yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong for relaxation. Yoga, has many, many benefits. And some of the kinds of exercise I talked about earlier, like stretching and balance, it incorporates a lot of those elements, but also mindful meditation. So I think yoga is a wonderful way to get exercise or relax. And actually I noticed, like, I took a yoga class the other day, and I noticed that at the end of it, I felt so relaxed. And there's sort of like at the end, sometimes this yoga teacher, her name is Sue Lehman. I've gone to her classes. I used to go to her classes at the Beach Cities Health District, but I guess now she's doing them mostly, online. And I just know that at the end, she'll have you kind of just lie flat on your back and just listen, to kind of just totally relax. And it's a little bit after you've done the exercise, and then relaxing is just this great feeling. So I guess to summarize, all of these elements is to establish a balanced routine in your days, in your week, that balances all these elements of self-compassion, sleep, physical activity, nutrition, play, relaxation. And then also, as we'll be talking about next time, connecting with other people, having social time, focusing on your school and your work, and all these things, having like a downtime where you can reflect, like mindful meditation. So, before we stop, by the way, I wanted to tell you that the relaxation exercise we did at the beginning was in your packet, I think at the first set of handouts. So in case you want to refer back to that. So for our last practice, I would like to share with you a practice called the mountain meditation. And I believe this is authored by Jon Kabat-Zinn, who created a program called mindfulness-based stress reduction. It was one of the earliest types of mindfulness that was used in medical care to help with healing, even people that had chronic illnesses or, things like cancer. And he's from the university, he was working at the University of Massachusetts, and he created mindful-based stress reduction. And this is a meditation called the mountain meditation. It's one of the strongest practices to channel honesty, because what's more fierce than a mountain? It's unwavering. It's just there. It doesn't change regardless of the situation or the weather or anything else that's happening around it. So today I'm going to take you through this practice, which consists of imagining yourself as a mountain and going through the 4 seasons of the year. So let's begin. Take a comfortable seated position, and if you're not already in one, and firmly plant your feet on the floor. Sit with conviction, imagining for a moment that you are the mountain and your head is the peak of the mountain. Imagine your shoulders and sides are either side of the mountain. And your bottom, where it meets the chair, is the base of the mountain. With this image in mind, let's gently close our eyes or lower our eyes. Now begin to connect to this image of a mountain. Perhaps your mountain is part of a range that includes other mountains. Or maybe it's a freestanding mountain. What mountain are you envisioning? As you connect with this image, slowly begin to sense the weight or presence of your mountain as it presses against the floor, the ground, or the earth. Then try to imagine your mountain starting the year off in the springtime. What does your mountain look like in spring? Are you flourishing with flowers and fauna? How green is your mountain? Perhaps there are streams and maybe there are creatures frolicking about. The conditions are perfect on your mountain. And now spring gives way to summer. Perhaps the mountain is getting a little hotter. Maybe experiencing some rainfall and summer storms. But that doesn't make any difference to your mountain because your mountain is strong. It's unwavering. It doesn't matter how much it rains on your mountain or if it's dark, clouds roll in. If there's thunder or lightning thrashing about, your mountain just sits and handles it. Imagine now that your mountain has experienced the first effects of autumn and the leaves are starting to change colors. The red, orange, golden yellow, and any other hue you can imagine. Slowly but surely, the leaves fall off the branches and flutter to the ground until the trees become barren. From that point, perhaps the wind starts to pick up and becomes cooler. Soon, snowfall begins on your mountain, and fall gives way to winter. Could be rain also. The snow or the rain comes to blanket the mountain and the deep valleys, and all of the waterfalls and streams are frozen over or filled with water. Perhaps the mountain is seemingly lifeless. But eventually the warming begins again. And from winter, your mountain cycles back into spring. Can you imagine the snow beginning to thaw and the water beginning to flow again? Look closely, and you can see the green sprouts coming up through the snow. Once again, your mountain is on its way to flourishing, soon to be teeming with life. At any point of difficulty during your days, or when you feel the need to channel courage or empower yourself in order to call yourself out or be fiercely honest or vulnerable, perhaps you can invoke this image of a mountain. When you do, remember, you are the mountain. You and the mountain are one. And regardless of what season it is, whether people visit the mountain or not, whether people like the mountain or not, the mountain is strong and unwavering. Slowly begin to wiggle your fingers and your toes and come back to a place where you are. And gently open your eyes. Thank you for so much for taking time to give yourself the space to invest in your self-care. What I'd like you to do for the rest of the week is, if you encounter any times of distress or times when you feel you really need to connect to a sense of empowerment, is to see if you can envision the mountain. Thank you for taking the time to do this. So maybe we can have discussion, any feedback and questions. I had a question from Gail. When does the next mindful meditation group begin? Gail, are you talking about our resilience workshop, or? Linda says, thank you. Thank you, Linda. Thank you for all you do. The resilience workshop. Yes, the next one will be next week. Here's my POW community service message. Please vote, get out the vote, complete the census, and celebrate International Peace Day, which is apparently today. I just want to make note of that. And I guess we may not have, I think we're going to do an evaluation for our, at the end of this series. You'll get a resource list. I think you already have a practice log. I don't know if anyone has found that useful to kind of note when you practice. And Mindful Resilience series, we have 2 more planned. October 5th, social and family bonds. Very important for resilience. Learning and growing, how we can learn and grow some of our resilience skills on October 12th. And then in the future, we're planning on something called Inspired Careers, and we're going to have interviews, newsletters, resources, and workshops coming down the road. I was originally, I think I may have shared with you last time, that we were going to be doing a workshop series after this one ended. I've decided to delay that a little bit. We want to do a little bit of groundwork for that, but we will be offering some resources and interviews and newsletters as we proceed. And one of the things is to be on our newsletter distribution list so you can hear about these upcoming events. By the way, also on Thursday, there's a parenting workshop, which is on Thursday from 2 to 3:30, sponsored by Behavioral Health Services, that I'm going to be participating in, talking more about parenting young people during COVID. So thank you. That's kind of brings us to the end. Does anybody have any last minute words of wisdom? Any things? Ruth shares that she's going to practice mindful eating. Anything else that anybody want to try this week? I encourage you to practice self-care, self-compassion. Just be conscious of this and be kind to yourself as we continue to go through all these world events. So thank you for coming today. I guess that's, we'll call it close. Anybody feel free to just comment on anything else, anything you'd like to see coming up. Actually, you've been such a wonderful, loyal group. I want to ask you if there would be things you would like to see in the future for workshops. So best wishes for you. Have a great week. Hope you don't be too hard on yourself, everybody. Be nice to yourself. Be kind, gentle. We can be the mountain this week. We can push through COVID by being a mountain. So I will see you next. Oh, wait. So the next workshop is not next week. I just want to clarify that. October 5th is the week after next. We're taking a little break. So see you next time.